Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're completely bypassing that dry, traditional 19th century business advice and stepping right into the colorful, anecdotal genius of a true legend. We're exploring the brilliant storytelling of P.T. Barnum, sourced straight from his 1880 classic, The Art of Money Getting. But hey, we aren't here for basic lectures on saving pennies. No, we are here for the stories. Barnum knew that to really make a point stick, you gotta wrap it in a narrative. And let me tell you, his book is an absolute treasure trove of real-life anecdotes. Even when he sat down to write a practical financial guide, Phineas Taylor Barnum just couldn't help himself. He was the consummate showman through and through. He deeply understood human nature, and he knew we are literally wired for stories. So instead of just handing his readers a boring list of rules, he used these humorous, vivid, and sometimes outright ridiculous cautionary tales from his own life to captivate his audience. He didn't just tell you what to do, he actually showed you the comedy and the tragedy of what happens when people get it so wrong. Here is our playbill for today's stories. 1. The $30,000 sofa. 2. The London penny showman. 3. Rise of the self-made. And 4. Pat and the rigid system. Let's get right into it. Act 1. The $30,000 sofa, a tale of vanity. Barnum warned that easy come, easy go is a very real phenomenon, and that sudden prosperity can trigger a massive financial cascade. He shared this wild story from a gentleman of fortune who told him how a single, seemingly harmless purchase for his wife, just an elegant new sofa, triggered an unbelievable chain reaction of vanity. As the man dramatically confessed to Barnum, that sofa cost me $30,000. But, as you might guess, he didn't actually pay $30 grand for the physical couch itself. The purchases spun wildly out of control. See, when that beautiful new sofa arrived at the house, it suddenly made all the old chairs look, well, pretty shabby. So they just had to buy new chairs to match. Then they needed new sideboards, new carpets, and new tables to match those chairs. Before long, literally the entire stock of furniture was replaced. But it didn't stop there. Once they had all this magnificent new furniture, they realized their house was way too small and old-fashioned for it. So, what did they do? They built an entirely new mansion. And, of course, a new mansion requires a whole new army of servants and equipage just to maintain the whole shebang. This ridiculous attempt to cut a dash and keep up appearances saddled the poor guy with a crushing yearly upkeep of $11,000. Now remember, this was a massive fortune back then. The man openly admitted to Barnum that this single sofa would have brought him to absolute inevitable bankruptcy if he hadn't been saved by a completely unexampled tide of prosperity in his business. It's such a brilliant, vivid story that perfectly illustrates how unchecked pride acts like an undying cankerworm on a person's hard-earned wealth. Moving on to Act 2, The London Penny Showman, The Power of Location. Picture this. It's 1858, and Barnum encounters a man with immense theatrical talent, but a truly terrible geographical strategy. While walking down Holborn in London with an English friend, they stumbled upon the penny shows. These places had massive cartoons outside promising wonderful curiosities, all for just a single penny. While being in the show line himself, Barnum couldn't resist going in. Inside, the showman was spinning these extraordinary, unbelievable stories about bearded ladies, albinos, and armadillos. But then he directed them to his wax statuary, and Barnum described these as the dirtiest, filthiest wax figures imaginable, looking as if they hadn't seen a drop of water since the deluge. Deciding to test this showman, Barnum pointed to a figure labeled Henry VIII. He playfully noted that, hey, everyone knows Henry VIII was a great, stout old king, but this wax figure was incredibly lean and lank. Without missing a beat, the sharp showman fired back with this absolute gem of a defense. Why, you would be lean and lank yourself if you sat there as long as he has. I mean, wow. Barnum admitted defeat right then and there, turning to his friend and saying, I show the white feather. He beats me. Recognizing that this guy's quick wit and undeniable showmanship were being completely wasted in such a bad location, Barnum went back a couple of days later and revealed his true identity. He told the man his talents were being thrown away in that spot, and he hired him right there to come to America, where there was plenty of elbow room. The man ended up working in Barnum's New York Museum for 2 years, then moved to New Orleans, and eventually built a massive $60,000 traveling show of his own. All because he finally combined the right vocation with the right location. Talk about a game changer. Act 3. Rise of the Self-Made, Determination over Inheritance.
Barnum absolutely loved focusing on historical figures who started with nothing. He wanted to prove that waiting around for an inheritance, or what he vividly called waiting for dead men's shoes, is just a fool's errand. Instead, he pointed to legendary figures of his era, guys like Cornelius Vanderbilt, who built an immense railroad and shipping empire from scratch, or A.T. Stewart, a poor Irish boy who grew up to pay taxes on $1.5 million of income every single year. He also highlighted John Jacob Astor, who started with literally nothing. Barnum argued that handing a boy $20,000 is basically like giving him a lottery ticket. Because he doesn't know the true value of it through his own effort, he's likely to lose every last dollar within a year.
The narrative of the self-made man wasn't just some abstract theory for Barnum. It was backed up by the most successful titans of his day. Take the story of Stephen Girard, for example. Girard began his life as a poor cabin boy facing incredibly hard circumstances. Yet, through sheer industry, perseverance, and hardcore economy, he ultimately amassed a staggering fortune of $9 million. Just incredible. And now for our final act, Act 4, Pat and the Rigid System, a comedy of errors. Our final story takes us to the legendary Astor House Hotel in New York City. Now, this was a place so intensely proud of its rigid efficiency and formal systems that it completely lost its common sense. When the Astor House first opened, the proprietors were incredibly proud of the rigid system that pervaded every single department. They would actually show off to guests at midnight. The proprietor would say, "Touch that bell, John." And within 2 minutes, exactly 60 servants, each with a water bucket in hand, would present themselves in the hall just to prove how safe and systematic the hotel was. But as Barnum astutely noted, sometimes you can carry a system a little too far. So what exactly happens when you value a rigid system over actual common sense? Well, one evening, the hotel was packed with guests when a waiter suddenly fell ill. Now, even though they had 50 other waiters, the landlord completely panicked, fully believing his beloved system would be ruined if he was short even a single man. In a rush, he grabbed Pat, an Irish bootblack, told him to wash his face, put on a white apron, and get straight into the dining room. The landlord then commanded Pat to strictly follow the hotel's inflexible rules. You must first give the guests a plate of soup, and only after they finish that, ask them what they will have next. Now, Pat had never been a waiter before in his life. It's actually a lot like another one of Barnum's jokes about an Irish pilot who claimed he knew every rock in the channel, promptly crashed the ship into a rock, and declared, "Ah, and that is one of them." Pat had that exact same unearned confidence. He readily agreed to enforce this rigid order, proudly stating, "Ah, and I understand perfectly the virtues of system." He was perfectly setting the stage for an absolute comedy of errors. Very soon, the guests arrived. Pat placed the plates of soup before two gentlemen. One ate his soup, but the other didn't really care for it. The second guest looked up at Pat and said, "Waiter, take this plate away and bring me some fish." But Pat, he just stood there. He looked down at the untasted plate of soup, remembering the strict, inflexible injunctions of the landlord. In Pat's mind, the guests simply had to finish the soup before the beloved system could continue. It's a hilarious story that perfectly encapsulates the sheer absurdity of blind obedience to routine. These vibrant, deeply human anecdotes prove that P.T. Barnum wasn't just lecturing his readers about saving money or choosing a career. No, he was illustrating in real time that the absolute best way to deliver any message is to wrap it in an unforgettable story. Whether he was talking about a $30,000 sofa, a witty wax figure showman, or a bewildered waiter staring down a bowl of soup, he made absolutely sure his lessons were impossible to forget. As we close the book on Barnum's tales in this explainer, let this final question guide how you choose to communicate and capture attention in your own life. Are you simply sharing facts, or are you telling a story your audience just can't forget? Thank you so much for exploring the narrative genius of P.T. Barnum with me today.